The sword is often considered the most representative weapon of the samurai, but throughout history, the bow and arrow also played a very important role. Especially during the early formation of the samurai, the bow and arrow were regarded as the most important weapons, and as time passed, the roles of the sword and bow gradually changed. The functions of these weapons evolved with each era, shifting in importance according to tactics and combat styles. Below is a summary of the changes in the samurai's weapons through different periods. Heian to Kamakura period. During this period, the main weapon of the samurai was the bow and arrow. In particular, the skill of archery on horseback was highly valued and the focus of battle was long-range attacks. It was essential for samurai to master the art of archery, and most battles were dominated by long-range combat using bows. The sword was a supplementary weapon, used only in close combat. Nanboku-cho to Muromachi period. In this period, combat styles changed, and the role of infantry increased, leading to a focus on group battles. While the bow and arrow continued to be used as long-range weapons, their importance gradually declined with the change in tactics. On the other hand, with the rise in close-quarter combat, the roles of the sword and spear became more significant, and these close combat weapons became the primary tools in infantry-based warfare. Sengoku period. The Sengoku period was a time of intense warfare in Japanese history, and it saw significant changes in both weapons and tactics. The introduction of firearms dramatically altered the role of the bow and arrow in battle. While the bow remained an important long-range weapon until the early Sengoku period, its role diminished as firearms, which were easier to train with and had greater power, became tactically superior. As a result, the bow's role was significantly reduced. Meanwhile, the sword established itself as the primary weapon for close combat during the Sengoku period. As large-scale battles and sieges increased, swords and spears became essential on the battlefield, and the sword evolved into a symbol of the samurai. Edo period. With the arrival of the Edo period and the long era of peace that followed, warfare itself nearly disappeared. As a result, the roles of the sword and bow as battlefield weapons changed significantly. The bow was no longer used in combat and instead developed as a tool for martial arts, ceremonies, and spiritual training. Kyudo, it's the way of the bow, became valued as a form of mental discipline and was regarded as a method for the samurai to cultivate their spirit. The sword, on the other hand, retained its status as the symbolic weapon of the samurai, revered as the soul of the warrior. However, its practical use shifted from battlefield combat to self-defense and as a symbol of honor, transforming from a functional weapon into a spiritual symbol. After Meiji period. After the Meiji Restoration, as modernization progressed, the bow and arrow completely disappeared from military use. However, Kyudo as a martial art continued to retain cultural and spiritual value. When the samurai class was abolished during the Meiji Restoration, the samurai's sword lost its role as a weapon of war. The 1876 edict prohibiting the wearing of swords marked the end of the sword's practical use in battle. However, the katana continued to be valued as a symbol of honor and mental strength. Over time, the katana also became highly regarded as a work of art and craftsmanship, gaining recognition from collectors and researchers both in Japan and abroad as an important cultural asset. The art of swordsmithing was preserved as a traditional craft, and the katana became a symbol of Japanese culture. Furthermore, as part of martial arts, the sword continued to be used as a tool for spiritual training in kendo and iaido. The focus shifted from combat techniques to self-discipline and the cultivation of mental strength, and the sword transitioned from a weapon of war to a tool for spiritual training. In the early Showa period, with the rise of nationalism, the katana once again became valued as a symbol of the military. However, after World War II, this role ended. Post-war, the katana was re-established as a cultural artifact rather than a weapon, playing an important role in exhibitions and as a tourist attraction today. Conclusion. The roles and importance of the bow and sword as samurai weapons changed significantly with each era. From the Heian to Kamakura periods, the bow and arrow were the primary weapons, but their role diminished with the introduction of firearms during the Sengoku period. Meanwhile, the sword became increasingly important over time, particularly establishing itself as the main weapon for close combat during the Sengoku period. From the Edo period onward, the sword transformed from a practical weapon into a spiritual symbol, and after the Meiji period, it came to represent not only the samurai but also Japanese culture and tradition. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.